Right, now we're getting onto something really powerful. So far, we've seen how to use jQuery and JavaScript to interact with our pages and do fancy things like make things change shape and size, updating website content. AJAX takes all of this to the next level. It was pioneered by Google when they were developing their Gmail interface, and now is very widely used. So whenever you use any webmail app or Facebook or Twitter or any app like that, you're using AJAX. And what it does is allow you to grab content from your server within your web page, for example, when the user clicks on a button, and do something with that without refreshing the page. Now that might not sound like much, but if you think about what has to happen when you press the send button on your email client, essentially some information, i.e. the email content, the recipient, etc., needs to be sent to a server, which then sends the email itself and reports back to the website saying that this has been done successfully. And we want all of that to happen without having to reload the page every time. It's a hugely powerful technology and one that can make your websites far more fun, interactive, and fast. One slight downside with it though is that we can't use it on local files. So AJAX doesn't work with files on your own computer like this. So what I'm going to do is work on it live on my Eco web hosting server. So if you haven't set that up yet, you might want to go back to the first section and follow the instructions to do that. Alternatively, if you don't want to set that up or you can't for whatever reason, then don't worry, just follow along. But bear in mind, the final code won't work if you're working on your local machine. So now I'm in Fire FTP within Firefox. If you haven't seen how to set this up, then again, go back to the FTP video at the beginning of this course, or ignore this bit if you're going to work locally and don't want to worry about FTP. So I've already connected to CompleteWebDeveloperCourse.com and I'm currently in the content folder here. And you can see I've already uploaded the 4 folders that we've been working with so far in the course. I'm on the jQuery section, so I'm going to go in there and you can see we've got the file jQuery.html. I'm then going to control click or right click and click open, and that will open jQuery.html in my text editor. So it looks exactly the same as before, but if we jump over back to Google Chrome, we can now go to a live website. So that is CompleteWebDeveloperCourse.com/4-jQuery for the folder, and then jQuery.html. And this will then load the same page that we had before. And just to remind you, I got that URL from content being the folder, and then 4-jQuery being the subfolder, and then jQuery.html being the file name. So now we can work in exactly the same way that we have been up until now, but it's slightly more exciting because we're working on a live website. So anyone in the world could go to this URL and see this page. Note, if you do check that out and go to this URL now, it's probably changed, but this is what it's showing as of the recording of the video. So just to make sure that everything is working as desired, I'm going to save that, which will then, via Fire FTP, it will save it on the live server, and when I refresh, just as we're used to, it changes and updates automatically. Brilliant. So let's just check that the jQuery still works. Yep, brilliant. Everything's connected up nicely. Okay. So what we're going to attempt to do here is load the content from another file and use it within our page. So in order to do that, we'll need to have another file to load the content from. So I'm going to go back over to Fire FTP and create a file right here. So I'm going to control click or right click on Windows and create file. And I'll just call this info.txt. It really doesn't matter at all what this file name is, but something fairly generic like that should work. And then I'm just going to open that again, and that will open up in brackets, and I'll just save a basic bit of text like that. and then close. Okay, so it's that content that we're going to try and get hold of in our web page here. All right, here goes. As always, there's a number of ways that we can do it. I'm going to show you the simplest one first, and then we'll move on to what I would recommend using in a real live site. So, as we're using jQuery functions, and jQuery, by the way, is not critical for AJAX, but it does make using it a lot easier. And then we use dot to call a particular AJAX function. So what we're doing here, we're not selecting a particular item within the page, as we have been doing so far. We're running a special AJAX function, and that function is get. So get does exactly what you might expect. It gets the contents of a file. And then we put in the file name, so info.text. And then we need to do something when the get is complete. And this is what I mentioned previously, is a callback. So we're going to create a callback function which will run when the AJAX command is complete and they've got the information. And then we can do whatever we want with it. So we define that as function. Now we're very used to just putting parentheses after our function. That's usually because we don't have a particular variable that we need to do anything with. But this time we do. We have the contents of that get request. And so we're going to save that in the variable data. You can use any variable name you like there, but data is pretty standard and obviously makes sense. So this data variable is going to contain the data, i.e. the contents of info.text. And then all we need to do is do something with it. So for now, we'll just alert it and hope for the best. Here we go. And there we go. So it might not look that exciting, but what we've done there is the very basis of every web app that you've used, every webmail client, every social media website, and probably every interactive website that you're going to create. So I think that's pretty cool, but there are some problems with this function. For one, it doesn't give us the option to do something else if this get request fails. And that's something that could well happen if someone is on their mobile in particular and they lose signal and they do something on your website. We need to be able to give them a nice message saying, sorry, that's not successful, connect to the internet, or even better, just keep quiet and then do it later when they are connected to the internet. So to do that, we need a more powerful command, and the command that we're going to use is AJAX. So again, string and then dot to access a jQuery function, and the function that we're using is AJAX. Now, AJAX is a little bit more complicated than get, but it is worth getting to grips with. The first thing that we need is to give the URL of the page we want to get. So just like with the get function, and that's exactly the same as before. So info.text. And then we can add extra functions on the end. So I'm going to add a done function, and this will be called when the AJAX request returns some information successfully. So as before, we're going to use function, and then again we want a variable to hold the data that's returned, which we can refer to later on. And then as before, we put what we want to happen when the AJAX request is complete in the curly brackets. So for now, we'll just alert data once again. So let's have a look. There we go. So that does exactly the same thing. So how then would we use it to let the user know if we can't get the data for any reason? Well, we add a second or a third, depending on your point of view, function to the end of this, which is fail. And this works in exactly the same way. So it's a function. We don't have any data this time because by definition it's failed. So there's nothing to return. But it works in exactly the same way. So let's say alert could not get data. So this will happen, for example, if I misspell my file name, and now I run this again, we'll get the error message, could not get data. So if we'd used the get command here and misspelled the file name, or the user's internet connection had gone down, then just nothing would happen. Whereas here we can let the user know that nothing's happened and ask them to send it again later or do whatever it is we want to do. So that's the big advantage of AJAX. There are lots of other settings that give you extra power and control as well. If you want to check some of them out, then just Google JQuery AJAX and you'll get lots of information on this command. But this is all that we need for now. So I'm just going to tidy this up slightly. I'm going to put these on new lines so it's a little bit clearer what's going on. And I'm just going to give you a tiny challenge here. Can you create a paragraph tag which is initially empty, and then instead of alerting the data, put it into that paragraph tag so it just appears right there on the page? Go for it. All right, hope you managed it. It was pretty straightforward. So there's your empty paragraph tags, and then here, instead of alerting data, we're going to access or select the paragraph tag, and then we're going to set the HTML to be data. And that's it. Let's take a look. Wonderful. This is some content. So really, it might not look like much what we've done there. In many ways, we've just recreated what we've already done, but in a much more complicated way. But hopefully you can see that there's a lot of power in this. And especially when you combine this with a server-side language like PHP or Python, both of which we'll learn later on in the course, you're then in a position to create really powerful web apps that are useful and fun to use, like Gmail, Facebook, and Twitter. Alright, so now you're familiar with AJAX, we're going to move on to a related but different topic, which will prepare us for our mini jQuery project, which we're going to do in 2 videos' time. And that new concept is another very powerful one, regular expressions.